Okay, I'm Dave Armstrong from Sound Planning, and we are doing a tutorial on the sound system at Faith Presbyterian Church. So the first thing I'm going to show you is that this church has a digital mixer that does not have a mixing surface. It's a Soundcraft UI series, and all of the mixing is done on a portable device. We're using a laptop primarily because it has a larger screen, but you can also do it with a pad, and if you're really phone savvy, you can even do it with your phone. It does not require any software because the mixer generates its own local network. So you don't even have to have Wi-Fi in the building. In fact, one of the most common mistakes that is made is people will attempt to connect to the building's Wi-Fi and then connect to the mixer. And it has nothing to do with the building's Wi-Fi. The building's Wi-Fi could be down. It wouldn't matter. Now, you notice I'm in Wi-Fi settings, and we see there are a couple other networks showing up here, but we want the one that says Soundcraft. And we're not seeing it because we connected to Faith PC. So we got to get out of here, disconnect, and I suggest that you try to forget that network, disconnect. This has a mind of its own. What am I doing wrong? Let's forget it right now. Okay, that way it won't be bugging us. Am I clicking the right click? Okay, Faith PC. Well, where is our sound? There's our Soundcraft. Action needed. Let's see what's going on there. We're going to connect to the Soundcraft UI 16. Now, the first time you introduce a computer to this system, you have to put in an address up in your browser, and it's, if I remember correctly, ui.mixer-io.com, or you got it, okay. I should know this. UI-mixer, is it -io? I thought there was a dot in it. But you can find it on Google, Soundcraft Mixer address. You have to do that. Usually once you do it, your computer remembers it, and it takes you to this screen, and you decide, am I doing this on a phone, or am I doing this on a larger, more sensible device? I'm not a fan of using a phone. It's just too small. I don't use a phone for anything but talking to people, but I'm kind of old school. Okay, UI is the name of the mixer. The larger screen is for a larger device, whether it's a tablet. And there we see our channels. Now, do we have a live microphone that we can use in the system? Yeah, but it's not going through the system, is it? We can run it. If you can do it easily, otherwise give me another mic, because I don't see myself showing up on any of the channels. You could give me a handheld if you want, Harold. I just like to have a signal show up on this mixer, and I didn't think of it until we actually got started. But you're looking at the mixing surface, and normally you are in the mix gain position, and mix should be highlighted. This is where you live most of the time. Now, I'll show you the other options, but 90% of the time operating this system, the mix is going to be highlighted. And what that means is when you turn up an individual channel like this, channel 2 is going to be going through the main speakers. Now, you can also go in here and right-click it and name that channel if you want to know what it is. Now, I don't know why it's not popping up, but maybe it's a left click. But usually that pops up. There we go. It says rename. So I could call this Tom, Dick, or Harry, or about anything I want. Pulpit, choir. I'm not going to do it because I'm not setting up this mixer. I just made sure it would work. But that's one of the features of the mixer, is you can name the channels. Now I'm going to escape from that, and so we should, okay, there we are. We're over on channel 12. Now there are more channels to the right, so you can take your mouse and, there you go, drag it across like that, and you can see we have 12 microphone channels, then we have line input channels and so forth. But you notice, even though we're not hearing any sound, we're seeing me, I think. That's me. That's responding to my voice on channel 12. Now notice this indicator shows that a microphone or signal is coming into the mixer whether it's turned up or down. Now, there's no sound coming through the speakers because I haven't turned it up. But once I turn it up, we should start to hear some, the master's down over here. So this is good. Master has to be up. Now you're hearing a ton of reverberation because we're in a reverberant, empty room. And so we won't leave this on for long because this is going to compromise the sound of the recording. So I can either turn this down or I can mute it. Now, you notice it's still showing a signal. You'll also notice that at the distance I'm using this microphone, it's a little bit hot because the blue is going all the way up to the top. And normally on a Soundcraft mixer, you want to have your maximum level at about -12. That gives you something called headroom. If I suddenly get excited and raise my voice, it won't be too loud. Now, the fact that this is too much coming into that channel is corrected by going over to the gain tab. Now, on an analog mixer, I went too many times, on an analog mixer, you used to have a gain control at the very top. That's the overall sensitivity of the input. Now, what you would do is go to channel 12. You see how high that gain is? It really shouldn't be that high. The rest of them are more realistic. With condenser mics, you usually end up down here. Now, maybe this is being used as a choir mic and people are far away from it, and that's why the gain. But for my purpose in demonstrating this thing, I'm going to drop the gain. Now, this is a sort of a one-time setting. You don't operate here. You don't change this every week. But you want to get your mics where you're not overdriving or underdriving. If I was too low, if I was way down here, I'm going to, now this takes a minute to react because there's a little latency in the Wi-Fi. Okay, thank you. I'm on 11 instead of 12. So I'll put this back where it should be. And I'm glad I've got Big Brother looking over my shoulder. Okay, so you see now it's a lower level. But if I was down here, I probably couldn't get enough on the channel. So we'll try it here and see how it works. And then when we're done setting our gain settings, and this depends on the type of microphone. Condensers are stronger than dynamics. It also depends on if the microphone is being used close to the mouth or far away, picking up a group. So you set your gain settings, and once you get it where you want, you leave it. But if you've done it right, and I always do this too many times, if I've done it right, I'm going to get normal volume up around 2/3 of the way up. So I'm going to unmute it, and see that's a little bit better. I can still crank it up, but I don't have to worry about getting feedback, where if I give it too much gain, when you get close to the top, you get feedback. All right, so back to the initial setting. We're in the mix gain, and so, the mix is highlighted. You've got an individual volume control, just like you do on an analog mixer. You push it up. You can also use the mute button. Solo, for your purposes, you're not going to use it. The purpose of solo, it sends the microphone directly to the headphone jack. Well, we're not using headphones, so there's not much reason to use the solo button. Now, when you're in the normal mode, your master, and I think just about all the time, your main master, which is the red control, is over here. And that turns down everything at once. Now, the next step is the aux sends, which is this tab over here. Now, edit we'll come back to, but that's more down the road. That's not something that you really want to play with too much because the system's been calibrated and most of the edit settings are going to be good. But you do use the aux sends. Now, aux sends basically means it's another place to send the sound. We're using the main part of the mixer, the main master, to feed the main speakers that the congregation hears. We also have a pair of monitor speakers for the choir. They're up in the corners. We could add, at some time in the future, floor monitors if it was necessary to get more sound for people operating down on the floor area of the pulpit. But the aux sends are for that. Now, right now we're using the aux 1 send for the choir monitors. So once I highlight aux 1, now these same controls that used to control the house are controlling what goes to the auxiliary choir monitor speakers. Now, we're using Zoom or some sort of video system, and we need another output. So on the mixer, there are jacks, XLR male outputs, that correspond to these 4 aux controls. So when I push aux 2, now let's say I had a video system, I was streaming online, and I was using a streaming encoder. Well, I could plug that encoder into the aux 2 output. Or if I was using a laptop to stream, or I was using some kind of a video recording device, I could come out of the aux 2, which is an output, go into the input of the recording device or the streaming device, and then I can mix whatever microphones I want, whatever levels I want, independently of what's taking place in the room. A lot of times your requirements on a stream are different because people are watching on a computer and they don't get benefits of the live sound. So we use the aux 2, and we've got 2 more of these. You could have another set of monitors. You could feed another amplifier. Let's say you had outdoor speakers. You put a power amp on aux 4, and when you highlight aux 4, this would determine what's going to the outside speakers. Now keep in mind that when you're in these aux tabs, you don't have any control over the house sound except the master. So you always have to kind of remember where you are, and that's why I said most of the time you live with the mix highlighted, because most of the time you're concerned about what's going through the house speakers. But if I want to get in and make adjustments to the stream or to the choir monitors, that's what I do on the aux sends. Now, the FX sends, forget about it. FX means effects. It's basically artificial reverberation. The last thing this church needs is any more reverberation, because everything in here is live. We've got hard floors, hard walls. We've got a tiny bit of drop tile, but not enough to help us. We've got glass in the back of the church, so the room is very live. Now, if it was the other way, and it was fully carpeted with a drop ceiling, and it was dead, you'd add some of this stuff back in, some of this echo, but not here. So don't even think about going into the effects sends, because they're just going to make worse echo than you already have. Now, you asked about the edit. I'm going to tell you what it does and then tell you to stay away from it. I am on channel 12. It's highlighted right now because that's what I'm talking into. That's what I've been fooling around with. So whichever microphone is highlighted, I can go into the edit mode and I can add bass or treble by bringing up the equalizer. See, it says EQ. Now, the last thing we would want to do in this room is add sound in at 200 hertz. So we don't know who did this, and we're going to pretend it did it by itself, and we're not going to slap anybody's hands. But if anything, you want to do just the opposite, because that's where this room resonates. You want to get rid of some of that. Now, you notice how the reverb kind of went down? You also notice for some reason we lost our connection. Fortunately, that doesn't affect the video, but if that happens, we go down here and we'll click on the airplane mode, right? We're connected. I don't know why that's stalling, but we're going to keep doing the video and we'll try to figure that out later. So that is the edit mode for equalization. But in a live room, most of the reverberation, which I should get rid of for the purpose of getting a better recording, most of the echo in this room is in the region between 200 and 500 hertz. So if anything, you want to reduce some of that. And even here, there's not much reason to boost that. Now, higher up in the range of around 5 kilohertz, maybe 3 to 5 kilohertz, you can sometimes get a little bit more clarity, by boosting there. But in speech situations, churches, generally you reduce some lows, especially in reverberant rooms, and if you add in anything with extreme moderation, you might want to add in this range. And the reason is this increases speech intelligibility. Once you get up here, you're talking to birds and dogs, but nobody's going to hear 20 kilohertz. And very few people notice much going on at 10, but speech intelligibility lives between 2K and 4K. That's 2,000 hertz. Most of the critical voice frequencies. Now, there are voice frequencies down here, but they don't contribute to intelligibility. They contribute to room reverberation, and if you take them completely away, you sound like Donald Duck. Now, there's also a high-pass filter that will basically block everything below a certain frequency. On older mixers, they used to call these speech filters, because generally for speech, you want less bass, because bass tends to confuse the higher frequencies and intelligibility is lost. Now, for music, you want more bass. So if it was being used for music, you get rid of the high-pass filter. If you've got somebody that has a really bassy voice and wants to sound like Elvis, you don't use the high-pass filter, because if you go too far, he starts to sound, again, thin. So the high-pass filter is basically a way to eliminate the low bass. Now, you also have dynamics. This is beyond the scope of most operators, but dynamics allows you to adjust a compressor. I'm not going to go into that. I think we set up a compressor on the master. Let's see if that's activated. Yeah. If you notice, there's a compressor on the master control that keeps it from getting too loud. This is my volume level, but over here is the compression. And I don't know if you can see it on the camera or not, but if I raise my voice, the compression comes down. What that means is it's squashing me a little bit. Now, it's very subtle. You won't notice it. But in a Presbyterian church, you don't want to get stupid loud. And so we have a little compression to keep people from getting their ears hurt. It'd be pretty hard to damage these speakers, but some speakers can be damaged by too much volume. If you get feedback, the compressor kind of gives you some protection. So compression we're using it as sort of a big brother invisible hand to turn down the volume if it gets too loud. But the way this is set, you'll never know it's there, because you're not going to get into the compression under normal conditions, only if something goes drastically wrong. So these are functions under the edit mode. I don't think you want to do much in the edit mode. If you did anything, it would be and don't change this, because this is a graphic equalizer. Remember, we're on the master now. The graphic equalizer is set with a real-time analyzer, because if you tell me that you can hear the difference between 100 and 125 hertz or 500 and 630 hertz, I don't believe you, because I've done this for 50 years, and I can tell you the difference between 80 and 315, but I can't tell you the difference between adjacent frequencies. So what do? We set this with an instrument called a real-time analyzer. So don't let anybody, no matter how long they've played in a band or how long they worked for the phone company, therefore they're a sound expert, don't let them reset the graphic. If anybody wants to reset the graphic, say, would you please show me your real-time analyzer? Unless they're in this business full-time, they're not going to spend the money for a real-time analyzer. So resist the temptation to mess with the graphic equalizer. All right, so that is pretty much it. Maybe we should take a pause and we can look at the hardware, or we could talk about some questions. But I'm going to go back to the normal operating position, which is here.